Good morning, afternoon or evening, noble viewers. This is Guthrie Govan, back for instalment number 3 of our odyssey into the scary but rewarding world of string bending. If you've been following this series thus far, mostly what we've been doing is like the more common, predictable bends that everyone does. And I thought it would be good to expand a little on that, explore some of the less obvious things that you can do with this oh-so-useful technique. So let's start maybe with an old favourite of every blues rock player, the unison bend. And this is all about playing the same note in two different places. So you're bending up to a certain pitch on one string and having a static version of the same target pitch on another string. So if you're playing blues in E, as I sincerely hope you do from time to time, you might be coupling this note with this note. And gear buffs may wish to take note of the fact that I'm now using the dirty channel of the Victory V30 amp because it allows the overtones of the notes to sing out a little more, and for something like a unison bend, this is beneficial. Unison bends sound good because there's a moment during the journey of the bent note where it's not quite in tune with the real note on the string next door. And you hear these two pitches that are almost the same, kind of fighting each other. If I do it slowly, you can hear the beating. You might even hear, depending on which speakers you're using to listen to this, you might even hear a ghostly third note that I'm not playing, which goes down in pitch. And it's that filthy, disgusting sound that makes unison bends so fun to play. So the two basic places you can do that would be here and maybe on the G and B strings, because these two are tuned differently. It's only a major third interval between the G and the B. The shape can contract a little bit. So if you wanted to expand somehow on that, and I put this before you as a kind of mindset to adopt when you're exploring any guitar technique, you might ask yourself, what if I bend this further? Or to put it another way, what would Steve Vai do? And certainly one thing I've heard Steve do within that kind of unison bend box is to bend beyond the target pitch. So instead of this, which you can break up into individual notes, he might bend up to the next available scale note. So that's possibly the most painful bend we've done in this series so far. That's two whole tones. It's going that far. But as we touched on in previous episodes, as long as your finger is kind of underneath the string and you're using the whole bulk of your finger to support that bend and stop the string from slipping away like that, you can do it. I believe in you. Or you could even go one further and bend up a whole perfect fourth. So from this note to this note. If you're a Steve Lukather fan, you've probably heard similar examples of like unfeasibly large bends. For instance, in the fade-out solo in Rosanna, which I will not replicate for legal reasons, but well worth checking out if you haven't heard it. It's one of those timeless guitar moments. Some big bends going on, bigger than you would expect within a familiar blues box framework. So, yeah, lesson number 1. Bend further than you thought you were going to bend and see what's there. As ever, the important thing is that your target, where you end up when you finish bending, is actually a note of musical significance. So you need to use these. Unfortunately, as soon as you bend a string, looking at the fretboard will no longer guide you, and you have to just use your ears to decide whether your current pitch is a worthy one or not. So what else can we do? If you're okay with a big bend like that, you might want to explore the Dave Gilmour territory of kind of stopping off somewhere in the middle of the bend. I sincerely hope everyone is familiar with the brick in the wall solo. Again, I will not attempt to replicate the whole thing, but there's one very famous bend that does that kind of thing. And it's basically the same two-tone big bend, but I'm deliberately kind of stopping off for a moment so that you can hear. So basically I'm playing this melody. Sorry, that happens sometimes. So if you're familiar with that bend, a smart thing to do is to decide what scale it comes from and then explore all the different diatonic variations. So let's assume, for argument's sake, that comes from the E Dorian mode, which is feasible. Because these are pretty fiddly bends, it makes sense to find a string where they definitely work and then just stay there and kind of explore by moving in this dimension rather than gluing yourself into one scale box where some of the strings might be a lot harder. So applying all the D Dorian notes, for E Dorian notes, I might take this and then see what happens if I start on this note. Needless to say, bending becomes more of a challenge as you approach the nut. The string feels a lot more tight around there, so maybe you need to figure out where your cut-off point is. You know, the fret beyond which you dare not go when doing these kind of bends. It doesn't matter where the fret is, and it just matters that you know, so that you don't attempt to do something in a live situation which is going to backfire horribly. So whether your cut-off point is there or here, doesn't matter. There's no shame in any of this. And it's also very dependent on how your bridge is set up and what the gauge of your strings might be and how tall your frets are. As a random aside, I find that tall frets make it a little bit easier to do these big bends because you can get your fingertip kind of inside a little bit more. So the next thing you could do, if that one wasn't difficult enough, is to do a similar thing but visit the same halfway point not only on the way up, but also on the way back down. And definitely the hardest note for any of these frets where I'm doing that basic trick is the halfway point on the way back down, because your fingers instinctively just want to release the bend completely. And what you have to do, even though what you're hearing is the note steadily coming down in pitch and stopping at this halfway point, what you have to tell your hand is you're still bending up. You still have to apply some resistance to the string. And really the trick is your wrist. Your wrist kind of tilts when you do these bends, so it's like that. Your wrist will stop at a predetermined point halfway during the bend. If I do this, maybe you'll see it better. I hope so. I'm going to stop sitting like this now because it's uncomfortable and demeaning. Right, back to a more dignified posture. That's something for you to explore. If you want to test your muscle memory, and this has been something of a recurring theme throughout all of my ramblings in this series, always test how well you know this stuff and how confident you are that you're going to hit the right pitch. This is the trick. You can use your pick or finger, to conceal the part of the string's journey where it's actually being bent. So in other words, my fretting hand is doing this, But what I want the listener to hear is just the melody and none of the in-between stuff that's connecting the notes. So I can use the pick to keep the string quiet while I bend up to where I think the next pitch is. And then keep it quiet again while I bend it up some more. Like that. So I think you could keep yourself busy for quite some time just picking different modes of the major scale in different keys and exploring how you can apply that kind of step to bend idea. And I leave you with this chilling thought. You can even go one step further. We started out doing this stuff with minor pentatonic scales, and then we did the diatonic thing. You can apply something similar to the chromatic scale, which of course is the one with every note in it. Chromatic scale. You gotta love it. So for that one, you might start just exploring just one fret, and then 2 frets, or 3 frets, or 4 frets, or surely this madness has to end soon. I'll stop there. I'll quit while I'm ahead. But you get the idea. That one's a really good test for your ear. It's not the most common approach, or not the most common application for string bending, but I think it has a certain validity. Maybe you'll find a use for it. Maybe it's... just have some fun. Don't hurt yourselves, and I'll be back with more of this nonsense. Guthrie signing out. Cheers.